songs, canticles and stories of Christians who, when they defeated the Ottomans, they didn't celebrate, they didn't have a party, they mourned, they cried, because they knew that the people that they had defeated in battle were their own children. And if you don't believe me, if you think that I'm an Islamophobe, as Adnan wants to slur me as, then go and ask the people in Bulgaria, Romania, Greece and Serbia. Because Adnan has smeared all of those people, tens of millions of people. He has just smeared them as Islamophobes because they remember the crimes of the Ottomans. As far as Adnan is concerned, if me telling the truth of history makes me an Islamophobe, then the Greeks are Islamophobes, the Bulgarians are Islamophobes, the Serbs are Islamophobes, the Romanians are Islamophobes, the Ukrainians are Islamophobes, the Croatians are Islamophobes, the Albanian Christians are Islamophobes, the Austrian Christians are Islamophobes, because they all agree with me, not Adnan.
Thank you very much. Did I interrupt? No. Did I interrupt once? No. Hopefully he won't interrupt me. Okay. Firstly, he talked about a massacre of Christians from 1894 to 1924. Yes? Okay. He's talking about the Armenian genocide.
No, I'm not.
What are you talking about then?
Talking about the Assyrian genocide.
Well, that is the Armenian.
No, it isn't.
Okay.
Go and speak to the Assyrians.
Okay.
It is not to be confused with the Armenian genocide. That is something separate.
Well,
don't lie.
You're going to have to be patient. Even if I'm lying, because you've been lying all the way, and I was silent, listening to your lies. So you have to be patient with my lies if they are lies.
So talk about the Assyrian genocide.
You have to be patient with my lies. Stop lying, because if I'm lying, let people check. Okay, the only genocide we know of, because he doesn't know anything about history, and he doesn't know. Only genocide we are talking about is the Armenian genocide, not Assyrian genocide, Armenian genocide. Okay, well, don't interrupt. Okay, the authority on Ottoman history, especially the Armenian period, that period when the genocide, alleged genocide was committed, who is the authority amazingly? A Zionist Jewish historian named Bernard Lewis. Bernard Lewis was Zionist, he was Jewish, he died very recently. He even advised the American government to invade Iraq. This is how far he went. I will go as far as to say that he was an established Islamophobe. Despite all that, Bernard Lewis, he clearly stated in his works on Ottoman history and Turkish history that the Armenian genocide was not the doing of the Ottomans. It was not the doing of Ottomans. Rather, the Armenian genocide was caused by a number of factors, and it was not the Ottoman governmental policy. Who says so? Not me, not Adnan Rashid, who's not a historian, according to him, Bernard Lewis. And amazingly, I have all these references in my mind for some reason. Okay, he has to Google everything. Okay, he has to Google everything. But I am aware of these things, thankfully. Right? Second point, he jumped from 1924 to 1389. He jumped almost 6 centuries. You know why he's doing that? Because there's nothing in the middle he can find. He has nothing to say on all the great things I mentioned about Ottoman treatment towards the Jews as well as the Christians in Galata, in Istanbul, in Salonika, and books have been written. Halil Inalcik is another Ottoman historian. Go and read his books. Halil Inalcik, Caroline Finkel, okay, Quartet, okay, then there is Freya Faruqi, Amnon Cohen. All of these people have written on Ottoman, including, go and read Bernard Lewis also. Read him. When you read these established, certified historians, not Islam-hating Islamophobes like Robert Spencer, Robert Spencer is not a historian. He's an Islamophobe who's making money out of gullible people like him who read his books. And they make conclusions on history. So all the references I'm giving are very clear. There is no doubt, if you read Caroline Finkel's book, Osman's Dream, in that book she gives all the details why Ottomans were fighting the Byzantines and the Crusaders, Latin Crusaders. Latin. This guy, you see, I don't think he expected me to talk to him on this topic. Okay? He's not left with any choice but to go on Google and in desperation find quotes. Just throw anything in the discussion. Just throw. Because the discussion started with what? Janissaries were being forced into Islam.
No, it wasn't.
Right? Wait, don't interrupt. Don't interrupt. I was silent. Ladies and gentlemen, watch his behavior. I was silent. I was silent. Okay, so why do people like this see darkness in Muslim history? They cannot see any. You know why I refer to academics? Academics have to be objective. Even if they have an agenda, even if they have bias and prejudice, they have to pretend to be objective. They have to mention great things about the Ottoman history. Now, I'm not saying Ottomans are perfect. I'm not standing by everything they did. I am sure they did great mistakes. The point here is to expose his lies. He doesn't know anything about Ottomans and what they did with the Jews and Christians. He sees darkness. Like ISIS, they see darkness in Islam and Islamic sources. All this is darkness. Islam, sword. Okay, it's sword. It's all sword. Okay, these guys, when they read Islam, they see sword. They see darkness, they see destruction. They don't see the coexistence between Jews and Christians and Muslims. They don't see 1,000 years of Muslim civilization. They don't see our libraries. They don't see our philosophers. They don't see Al-Andalus. They don't see Baghdad. They don't see the libraries and the universities and the street lamps of Cordoba. They don't see the civilization Muslims had achieved for over 1,000 years. Bernard Lewis states, the man who actually specialized in Turkish history, he states that 90% of the world's Jewish population, listen to me carefully, everyone, 90% of the world's Jewish population survived for 1,000 years under Muslim protection. Muslim protection. Muslims protected the Jews from who? From who? From them. From them, those who are wearing crosses like this and their uniforms, Crusaders. Crusaders and Christian governments of Europe. Where was the Holy Spirit? What happened to the Christians? Was Holy Spirit on holiday for 1,000 years? Was Holy Spirit not there to guide the flock of Jesus? The lovely gospel reading flock of Jesus? Those who were burning Christians, their own brethren, burning for 3 centuries, European Christians. Christians, I insist, Christians, okay? Of course Christians have changed today. Of course Christians have changed today. Christians are different people today. They liberal, secular ideologies have changed Christians. Christians up to the 19th century were not the same. I'll tell you something. The last witch to be burnt alive in Europe was burnt in 1782. How long was that? How long ago was that? 2 centuries. 200 years ago. The last witch to be burnt alive in Britain was burnt in 1726 in Scotland. For 3 centuries, Bob's Christian brothers were burning witches. Hundreds of thousands of women were burnt alive at stake. Less than 200 meters from the spot where I stand. Less than 200 meters away, there is a place called Tyburn Gallows. Tyburn Gallows, there, in front of the marble, in front of the Marble Arch. That's where people were executed, burnt, decapitated, quartered. All kinds of things were done by Bob's Christian brothers. He doesn't see that. For 3 centuries, it doesn't stop there. Heretics were being burnt alive. Scientists, Galileo nearly got burnt for his heliocentric theory of the solar system. Galileo, when he came out, he said, actually the solar system is heliocentric, not geocentric. You know what the church said to him? He was put on trial, nearly burnt alive. Others were actually burnt alive by the church. Who was doing it? Christians. What will Bob do? I really want him to come back and comment on that. Really want him to do that. He can see Ottomans doing all those evil things according to Robert Spencer and all the Islamophobes he's reading online. He can see all that. But what has Bob to say about Crusades? He said Crusades ended by the 14th century. No, I will again guide you to an academic source, Housley, Housley. That's the name of the scholar. And the book is titled Later Crusades. Crusades continued until the 16th century. In fact, some people say the Battle of Lepanto between the Ottomans and the Christian Habsburg, a coalition of Habsburg and Phoenicians and the Catholic Church in general. In 1571, the Battle of Lepanto was regarded as crusade against the Ottomans. So he doesn't know again what he's talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, my difficulty with people like this is that you cannot possibly argue with ignorant people. I am continuously guiding you to academic sources. Go and read Western academic sources, not Muslim propagandists, not Muslim polemicists or apologists. Not one name I mentioned in my discussion today. Okay, I can give you Muslim sources, for example. Sallabi, Muhammad Ali as-Sallabi has written books on Muslim history. They have been translated into English. I will never guide you to go and read his books. They are for Muslims. Okay, right? But I have not mentioned one Muslim apologist source. Throughout, I've mentioned all Western academic sources. One of them was Suraya Faruqi, who is a Muslim, but her books have been published by Western academic institutions. She is reputable, she's recognized as an academic. Bob, on the other hand, has nothing academic. Who does he have? A 19th century source, Finley, okay, or Robert Spencer, a well-known Islamophobe.
It's a joke.
He's like Hitler to the Jews, right? So, the point is, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know about Muslim history, Muslim civilization, Muslim conquest for that matter, go and read academics. Books published by reputable institutions like Cambridge, Oxford, Columbia, Pennsylvania, Georgetown. Okay, these scholars are recognized. They will tell you, both sides, they will tell you what happened in wars, and they will tell you how Muslims in general treated the Jews and Christians. Now Bob will never comment on two things, and I hope he proves me wrong when he comes back. The good treatment towards the Jews and the Christians throughout the Muslim civilization, not only Ottomans, throughout the Muslim civilization. Did Muslims ever do anything good to the Jews and Christians? Simple question. Forget everything. Did Muslims ever do anything good to the Jews and Christians? Question number one. Did the Christians ever do anything bad to women, for example, witches being burnt alive for 3 centuries, or heretics being burnt alive, or the Crusades, or the Inquisition, No, you can, of course, patience. I was listening. Okay. These two questions, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to keep these two questions in mind. When Bob comes back and see how Christian missionaries are completely incapable of being objective in their discussion on Islam and Muslims. They, like ISIS, see darkness in our sources. ISIS and these missionaries are brothers in one faith, and that faith is hatred of Islam, and there are other Islamophobes like him as well. Yeah.
So, wait, no, let me reply.
Answer my two questions.
I'm going to deal with it.
I'm going to be silent.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about something else. What I find, why are you no? I want to talk about something else, bro. No, I want to talk about something else. Right, notice.
I really wanted to hear what you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Adnan, the apologist for Islamic supremacism, has tried to mischaracterize my argument
That's part of the problem, isn't it?
because I quoted a polemical writer, Robert Spencer. He ignored the fact that I also quoted 2 independent historians. I'll give him some more books. The forgotten genocide, Eastern Christians, the last Arameans, by S. Cotois, a book written using the documents of the Dominicans who recorded the genocide of Assyrian Christians before the Armenian massacre. That's a book you could read.
Who published it?
I've just given you the publisher.
Yes. Who's the publisher?
I've just given you the publisher.
Sorry, tell me again, I forgot. Who's the publisher?
The author by S. Cotois.
No,
It doesn't
the publisher.
It
Who's
doesn't
the
give me
publisher?
the
I need the publisher.
Well, you can Google it. Stop interrupting.
No, I'm not interrupting.
Stop interrupting.
Okay. So
Right.
there's no
So,
publisher. No, there's no publisher.
So, talk about clutch at straws. Every time you meet what he demands of you, he changes the goalposts. He changes the target.
So Muslim.
He demanded historians. Well, here's one. The Myth of the Andalusian Paradise by Dario Fernandez Morera, a Spanish historian speaking about the persecution of Christians in Spain. Because Adnan, the apologist, not a historian. Where's this? The slavery. The slavery bit. Yes. So Adnan wanted to present Andalusia
Who's the publisher?
as some I've just given you this reference.
the publisher.
Notice he's interrupting.
The publisher.
Notice he is interrupting. Shush, Adnan. I know it burns you. I know it burns you to hear history. But try, Adnan. Listen to what the historian wrote.
Historian. Can I ask you a question?
Listen to what the historian wrote.
He's not a historian.
Because this is speaking about Adnan. Other efforts to downplay the phenomenon of massive slavery in the Islamic empires have been similar marvels of academic ingenuity. Thus, defending slavery in the Islamic Mamluk Empire, as medieval study scholars, offers the official view among specialists. It is important to understand that medieval Islamic civilization had a different attitude towards slavery than that seen in Western Europe. This is what the apologists say. Slaves were much better treated and their status was quite honourable. Furthermore, the career opportunities open to a skillful Mamluk and the higher standards of living available. The historian is pointing out the efforts by people like Adnan Rashid to whitewash history. Go and read his book. He exposes the lie of this supremacist. He exposes the lie of this apologist. No, thank you. Who wants to dominate, who seeks to justify the domination of Islamic caliphates. We've given two references. Let's talk about the Armenian and the Assyrian genocide. Now remember, he tried to say that this wasn't the official actions of the government, bearing in mind that the genocides, two of them, happened independently and by two different governments, the Caliphate and Ataturk's secular Turkey. But when you hear the numbers of those that are slaughtered, do you honestly believe that it could be carried out without the sanction of a government? All in all, about 1.5 million Armenians were killed in the Armenian genocide. 700,000 Greeks and 275,000 Assyrians were killed in Ottoman territories under similar circumstances.
And 25 chicken.
So, Adnan is saying that Christians have nothing to complain about. So let me ask Adnan, the apologist, if we kill 275,000 Muslims in the UK, would you have something to complain about? If we killed 1.5 million Muslims in Germany, would you have something to complain about? I put it to you that Adnan has lied to you. He said Christians in the Ottoman Empire under Muslim rule had nothing to complain about. Adnan is an apologist. The Ottoman Caliphate invaded Christian lands. They mass murdered Christians. They took Christian slaves. They desecrated Christian churches. They confiscated Christian property. They restricted the rights of Christians to practice their faith fully and completely. If you doubt what I'm saying, Google it. Do your own research. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to believe the overwhelming weight of history. Go and speak to the Assyrian Christians if you think, as Adnan does, that I'm just an lying Islamophobic bigot. I don't believe that any genuine person who looks into this history can come to any other conclusion than that the Ottoman Caliphate was an unjust empire, resistance to whom, such as at the Battle of Lepanto, was completely justified, like that of the Battle of Kosovo, and whose demise and destruction at the hands of the Imperial West should be celebrated. And if you don't believe me, ask the Greeks, the Romanians, the Bulgarians, the Serbians, the Croatians, why they celebrate, not mourn. They don't mourn, they celebrate their independence from Ottoman rule. If it was so good, so amazing, so wonderful, why do they celebrate their freedom? If the Iberian, Hispanic domination of Islam was so great, so wonderful, so amazing, why do the Spanish celebrate their liberation? I'll tell you why. Because they remember the martyrs of Cordoba. They remember the desecration of the shrine of St. James. They remember what it means to pay the jizya and feel yourself humiliated, as the Quran instructs that Christians are. Don't listen to this apologist. He wants to blur the lines between myself and ISIS. Why? And Adnan, this will be my last point.
I'm patient.
The reason why he wants to blur the lines between myself and myself and ISIS is because he knows the evidence is against him. I've given him academic studies written by historians, and he is hoping to win you over through an emotive response rather than a genuine analysis of the historical evidence. Adnan is not a historian. Those who apologize for the Islamic caliphates are not historians. They are apologists seeking to justify Islamic supremacism.
Okay, thank you, Bob, for that long speech. Now it's my turn. Now, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, if you remember when I asked Bob to answer two questions, very simple questions. Did Muslims ever do anything good with the Jews and the Christians?
Sorry, I forgot.
He forgot.
I did.
He says he forgot.
I did.
Okay, you can come back in your turn. Answer these questions. Second question was, did Christians ever do anything bad to women, heretics, and non-Christians, i.e. the Jews and Muslims? The list and the history, academic history, not Islamophobic or polemical history of Islam or Christianity. I'm talking about what academics have written on the phenomenon of witch burning and Inquisition and heretic burning. There are tons of books written on these topics, published by reputable Western academic institutions. When I asked him about those two books, who published them, I can guarantee you none of these polemical works against Islam and Muslims have been published by any reputable Western academic institution, such as Cambridge, Oxford, Columbia, Pennsylvania, and the list goes on. So the reason why he will always, without a break, rely on polemical, Islamophobic, biased, prejudiced sources is because he cannot find support in Western academic sources on these issues, these topics. Every single source, without an exception, I mentioned was published by a reputable institution, by recognized, established historians who are neither polemicists nor bigots. Every single source he mentioned are either polemicists or a bunch of bigots like Robert Spencer and the other sources he mentioned. Christian missionaries like him can never be objective when dealing with Muslim history and Muslim civilization, because they can't see anything good and they can't see anything bad about their own history. When we do a comparison between the Muslim civilization and the so-called Christendom or Christian civilization, you will see a huge difference in treatment towards the other. Even the most hostile academics like Bernard Lewis, who was a Zionist by confession, who advised George Bush to invade Iraq. He was a historian, recognized historian. Even he goes as far as to say that the Muslims, when they were in power, they treated the Jews with utmost kindness and generosity. Even you can see him lecturing on this topic. Go and Google his name, Bernard Lewis, Muslims and Jews. You will see the lectures and see what he has to say. Why can Bob not recognize that? You know why? It is just he's caught the disease. The disease ISIS has caught. All they see is darkness and hatred in history, in theology, in literature. They cannot see any beauty. They cannot see any coexistence. They cannot see any compassion between Muslims, Jews and Christians. All they see is hate and darkness. Islam has to be evil. Even though there are good things about Islam, Islamic civilization lasted for over 1,000 years. The oldest churches in the world are in the Muslim world, right? What did the Christians do when they came to power? And if I heard him correctly, did he say Western imperialism is to be celebrated? Is that what he said?
No, you misheard.
Oh, I have misheard. Okay, so I'm not going to comment on that. But even if he didn't say that, Western imperialism, which was primarily Christian, Because with imperialism came Christian missionaries. They went to Africa, they went to India, and as irrational as that faith is, people rejected it. Even though imperialism was in power, right? It talked about slavery. It is in the Bible. Paul, and he's a Christian, I know, he's wearing a cross there. And he's got an idol on the cross.
Problem with my cross?
Okay. I do, yeah, I do.
There you go.
It's idol worship.
Islamic supremacism. He has a problem with my cross.
Okay. So
Islamic supremacism. He has a problem with my cross. Shut up, the Muslims.
By the way,
Islamic supremacism.
Okay, can I continue? By the way, I'm not an Islamic supremacist. I am a coexistence supremacist. I want humans to coexist. I believe Islam as a faith and as a civilization had the most beautiful period of coexistence in human history. And the only other example we have in human history is modern West, where Muslims, Jews and Christians coexist harmoniously. That's beautiful. That's to be cherished. We as Muslims, we acknowledge virtue where it exists. And it is not because of Christianity where we have coexistence. It is because of liberalism. Liberalism and secularism is not necessarily Christian, right? Modern phenomenon called Western civilization and the coexistence we find therein is not because of Christianity. In fact, when we look at the Christian civilization, 19th century backwards, what we see is persecution, what we see is violence against the Jews and Muslims. The Jewish people were facing extinction. He will never comment on that. I wonder why. He will never talk about how Jews were driven out of Britain in the 13th century, and then from France, and then from Spain. Where were the Jews running to? Where were they going? North Africa, Muslim North Africa, Muslim Middle East, Muslim Ottoman lands, and they flourished. They became